Well, I don't think we're going to necessarily ask for a declaration of war.
At 2:10 a.m., the Caribbean Sea was black and still. 60 nautical miles off the Colombian coast, radar screens aboard a U.S. Navy patrol plane flickered with 5 silent shapes moving across the water. No lights, no identification. Each flew a humanitarian flag, yet none appeared in any registry. Through the darkness, infrared scans revealed the truth. Beneath those false emblems hid containers packed with synthetic chemicals. An estimated 5 tons of methamphetamine and fentanyl, worth nearly $30 billion. Intelligence analysis traces the operation to a shadow alliance between Venezuela's Los Sentinelas cartel and Mexico's Gulf Syndicate, 2 of the most heavily armed criminal groups in the hemisphere. Their goal was not just profit, but disruption, to flood American cities with narcotics and weaken the very system that stood against them. For the United States, this was no longer crime. It was the opening move in a new kind of war. One fought not with armies, but with cargo. And before those ships could reach the Gulf, America's steel shadow had already begun to move. So don't forget to subscribe to Military Power, where every mission reveals the truth behind the battles shaping our world. In the early hours before dawn, Operation Iron Tide entered its combat phase. The USS Freedom, a literal combat ship designed for high-speed interception, adjusted its course toward the unidentified convoy. 2 SH-60 Seahawk helicopters lifted off from its deck, their rotors slicing through the humid Caribbean air, while an MQ-9 Reaper drone maintained surveillance from 6,000 meters above the water. The mission was clear: intercept and neutralize all hostile vessels before they could disperse into international lanes. Aboard the Freedom, 300 sailors and 30 elite agents from the Drug Enforcement Administration prepared for battle. Each team had rehearsed the operation for weeks, familiar with every deck and corridor of the ship. Their weapons were ready: M4 carbines for close defense, M2 47.62 millimeter machine guns positioned along the rails, and a Mark 110 57 millimeter naval gun mounted at the bow. The crew operated in silence, their actions timed to the rhythm of the radar. On their screens, hostile blips were moving closer in a crescent formation, a tactic used by trained military units rather than smugglers. This was the first sign that the operation ahead would not be routine. At approximately 3:15 a.m., the Freedom's communication officer sent the standard challenge signal across encrypted maritime frequencies. There was no response. Moments later, the enemy vessels accelerated and shifted formation. The first muzzle flashes broke through the darkness. Heavy gunfire erupted from the cartel ships, cutting through the waves with a sound that carried across the open sea. The Freedom immediately returned fire. Its Mark 110 gun roared to life, launching high explosive shells at a velocity of 900 meters per second. Each impact sent plumes of flame rising from the water as the front vessel of the convoy disintegrated under the blast. The Seahawks entered the fight seconds later. From their side doors, gunners unleashed streams of M240 fire that tore through the cartel decks. Tracer rounds arced across the sky, illuminating the sea with streaks of red and gold. Below them, the Freedom maneuvered sharply, closing distance on the remaining ships. Coordination between air and sea units was precise. Every burst of fire from the helicopters coincided with the ship's salvo, suppressing return fire and preventing the enemy from regrouping. The cartel fighters responded with unexpected aggression. Their AK-103 rifles and PKM heavy machine guns rattled through the night, while several RPG-7 rockets streaked toward the Freedom's hull. 2 rockets exploded short of the target, throwing geysers of seawater against the ship's armored sides. The third detonated closer, shaking the deck but causing no structural damage. The Freedom's gunners recalibrated instantly, their training evident in the mechanical precision of every movement. Within 30 seconds, a second cartel ship was hit, amidships. Flames engulfed the deck, and the vessel began to list heavily to port. By 3:25 a.m., the Freedom had full control of the engagement. The MQ-9 Reaper provided real-time targeting data, identifying heat signatures on the fourth vessel attempting to flee northward. Permission for strike was granted through encrypted channels. The drone released a single AGM-114 Hellfire missile. It descended rapidly and struck the fleeing ship midsection, triggering an explosion that lit the horizon like a sunrise. Fragments of metal rained down onto the surface before fading into darkness. The remaining ships attempted evasive maneuvers, but the Freedom's pursuit systems locked on their positions. Using radar-guided fire, the crew delivered sustained bursts until the enemy fire ceased. By 3:40 a.m., the battle was over. The sea, moments earlier filled with thunder, fell silent again. Smoke and fuel drifted across the surface as the Freedom reduced speed. Seahawk crews scanned the wreckage, marking survivors and transmitting coordinates to boarding teams. DEA agents boarded the remaining hulls under the cover of first light. The scenes they found were chaotic, but revealing. Crates of industrial chemicals were stacked beneath false humanitarian supplies. Barrels marked Medical Aid, Caracas, were filled with methamphetamine and fentanyl. Counting teams recorded more than 5,000 kilograms of narcotics and $42 million in unmarked cash. The level of organization left no doubt that this convoy was part of a larger network. In total, 43 cartel gunmen were confirmed dead, 26 captured alive, and all 5 vessels destroyed or seized. What appeared to be an isolated smuggling mission had unfolded into a coordinated battle at sea. For the first time in decades, American naval forces had faced a non-state enemy with military-grade weapons and discipline comparable to a trained army. The implications were immediate and profound, signaling a dangerous shift in how cartels operate beyond their borders. As dawn broke over the Caribbean, the horizon glowed orange with the reflection of burning wrecks. Rescue teams continued to comb the debris for evidence. Every recovered document, weapon, and data drive was cataloged and sealed for transfer to intelligence units. Yet among the shattered hulls and twisted steel, agents uncovered something more valuable than drugs or cash. It was a series of encrypted ledgers pointing to a complex web of offshore accounts and manufacturing contracts. Those findings hinted at an alliance far beyond organized crime. The operation's tactical victory was undeniable, but its discovery changed everything. Beneath the waves, America had uncovered not only a fleet of smugglers, but the machinery of a transnational enterprise that blended warfare, finance, and narcotics into a single threat. As the last Seahawk circled above the smoke, one truth became clear. The battle at sea was only the beginning, and what waited on land would reveal the true scale of this hidden war. Hours after the naval battle, Operation Irontide entered its second phase. The evidence retrieved from the destroyed cartel vessels pointed investigators toward 2 command hubs hidden deep inside Colombia. Intelligence analysts cross-checked the encrypted drives and shipping manifests taken from the wreckage. The data confirmed that the logistical core of the network operated from 2 industrial zones located near Bogota and Cartagena. Each site was disguised as a humanitarian logistics company that claimed to deliver aid supplies across Latin America. In reality, these facilities were sophisticated narcotics laboratories connected to financial and defense entities in Venezuela. By early morning, coordination between the United States and Colombian authorities was complete. A joint task force of 150 personnel from the Drug Enforcement Administration, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and Colombia's National Police prepared for simultaneous raids. Satellite images revealed heavy vehicle movement around both sites, suggesting that the cartel had mobilized guards and equipment following the loss of their ships. The operation, now under the codename Irontide Phase 2, began shortly after sunrise. Convoys of armored vehicles rolled through the narrow streets of Cartagena's industrial district, while helicopters hovered low above the rooftops. At 8:12 a.m., the first strike hit a warehouse located near the port. The building's facade bore the name of a charity organization registered with international aid programs. Behind that front, agents found a reinforced structure with multiple underground chambers. Inside, the air was thick with chemical fumes. Rows of steel tanks and pressurized tubes connected to portable lithium reactors lined the walls. These reactors, designed to power mobile laboratories, could synthesize fentanyl precursors every 4 hours. Teams equipped with protective suits secured the area, shutting down the volatile systems one by one. Resistance began almost immediately. 30 armed cartel soldiers opened fire from elevated platforms and behind chemical containers. Automatic rifles and fragmentation grenades echoed across the port district. The agents advanced under coordinated cover fire, moving through corridors choked with smoke and sparks. Within 10 minutes, the firefight subsided. When the facility was finally secured, investigators uncovered extensive evidence of industrial-scale drug production. Digital blueprints found inside the control room displayed designs for unmanned underwater vehicles capable of transporting narcotics across the Gulf of Mexico. The discovery confirmed that the organization had merged engineering, military, and chemical expertise to sustain its operations far beyond traditional trafficking methods. Forensic teams cataloged every recovered item. 12 safes were extracted from a hidden sublevel, each containing stacks of US dollars, gold bars, and encrypted data drives. The combined seizure from the Cartagena site amounted to $68 million in assets and over 7 tons of chemical precursors. Agents traced several electronic transactions through offshore banks in Panama, Macau, and Hong Kong. Each account led to a front company registered under Ortega Holdings, a Venezuelan defense contractor previously sanctioned for exporting restricted technology. Meanwhile, in Bogotá, another battle unfolded. At 9 o'clock, a second task force breached an industrial compound within the city's logistics district. This site was larger, with multiple warehouse complexes linked by tunnels and reinforced doors. The cartel had converted these facilities into a cluster of mobile synthesis pods, each containing portable reactors and automated mixing systems. When agents entered the perimeter, they came under intense fire from gunmen stationed on the rooftops. The engagement lasted more than 40 minutes as law enforcement advanced through overlapping lines of resistance. By the time the shooting stopped, 25 cartel fighters were dead and 43 captured alive. By noon, both cities were under federal control. The combined seizures reached 14 tons of chemical precursors and 90 encrypted hard drives. Dozens of forensic analysts began examining the recovered data, mapping every financial transfer and supply chain node. The information exposed a network that linked criminal groups with government-connected corporations across several countries. What emerged from this analysis was not simply a drug ring, but a multinational infrastructure capable of sustaining its own research and logistics systems. Technical experts reviewing the captured machinery noted the use of restricted alloys and microprocessor components found only in military-grade applications. Some of the reactor cores bore serial numbers tied to Venezuelan defense contracts signed 3 years earlier. These connections suggested that elements within the state defense sector had either supplied or cooperated with the cartel. Such cooperation blurred the line between organized crime and political power. It also raised serious questions about the extent to which state resources were being redirected toward covert operations that threatened regional stability. The outcome of Phase 2 was an operational success and an intelligence breakthrough. The joint U.S.-Colombian force neutralized the cartel's inland manufacturing capacity, seized more than $1 billion in combined assets, and captured key figures who had coordinated the maritime and land operations. Yet beneath that success lay a larger revelation. The evidence indicated that the cartel had evolved beyond traditional trafficking, merging its logistics with state-linked industries and military technologies. It was a model of hybrid warfare conducted through commerce and narcotics rather than open combat. As the day ended, smoke still rose from the raided compounds, and teams continued to recover documents from the debris. The files pointed to several new facilities under construction across South America, suggesting that the network's reach extended far beyond Colombia. For Washington and its allies, the mission had entered a new phase. What began as a fight against smugglers at sea was becoming a confrontation with a system that operated like a shadow government. The revelations from Colombia peeled back the first layer of a deeper threat, one that would soon test the balance between law enforcement and national security across the hemisphere. Washington treated the maritime victory as a starting point rather than an end, since the evidence from sea and land pointed to a deeper system that financed and protected the convoy. Within hours, the White House convened the National Security Council to align military, law enforcement, and financial tools. Senior officials reviewed synchronized feeds from satellites and the MQ-9 Reaper that had recorded the engagement at sea and the raids inland. The objective was not only to confirm legality and precision, but also to map the hidden architecture that made the operation possible. The intelligence picture grew sharper as teams merged imagery, documents, and transaction logs. Analysts overlaid heat signatures from the Reaper with cargo manifests captured in Cartagena and Bogota. Each layer confirmed that the network moved chemicals and cash in a pattern designed to look like humanitarian traffic. This pattern masked a logistics chain that stretched from Venezuelan suppliers to Asian banking nodes and then back into the Caribbean through cutout firms. What emerged was a supply network with military discipline and corporate cover. United States Southern Command framed the threat as logistics warfare, a model in which cartels behave like state actors and states sometimes behave like silent partners. The core idea was simple to explain and serious in consequence. If an enemy can move precursors as aid, ship cash as donations, and hire engineers through front companies, then it can build combat power without crossing a border. This is why the sea battle mattered less than the network behind it. Cyber units traced payment instructions that hopped through multiple jurisdictions before returning to companies that appeared legitimate on paper. The findings supported a rapid financial strike that would deny working capital to the network before it could rebuild capacity on the coast. By late afternoon, 7 bank accounts linked to the enterprise were frozen across Macau, Dubai, and Hong Kong, with an aggregate value of $1.4 billion. Several carriers altered schedules to bypass high-risk corridors between the Colombian coast and the Yucatan Passage. Port agents reported increased inspections, which slowed turnaround times and pushed freight rates upward for routes that served the United States. Regional defense signals changed as well. Venezuela placed its F-16 fleet on a stand down to avoid escalation and to evaluate readiness after reports of electronic surveillance near its airfields. The pause reduced immediate risk of miscalculation in the air, while highlighting the strategic pressure created by the exposure of state-linked technology in cartel laboratories. Neighboring states quietly expanded maritime patrols and shared radar tracks to deter opportunistic copycat convoys. The intelligence take from Phase 2 helped convert those ripples into targeting information. Data from 90 encrypted drives revealed purchase orders for restricted alloys, microprocessors, and reactor parts. Many orders referenced suppliers with known relationships to sanctioned firms in Venezuela. Procurement histories aligned with shipment logs that passed through free trade zones before reaching front warehouses. This level of clarity allowed investigators to build cases that mixed export control violations with narcotics charges, which created stronger leverage in court and in diplomacy. Analysts then built a forward look so that policymakers could anticipate rather than react. 3 trends stood out from the combined data. First, cartels preferred modular laboratories that could move across borders within days, which made the loss of one site less decisive than before. Second, the network used charitable branding to blend into disaster relief pipelines, which offered seasonal cover and donor lists. Third, The enterprise invested in engineers who could adapt civilian tools like three-dimensional printers into durable production lines for high-purity precursors. Together, these trends illustrated a shift from street crime to an industrial model that competes on speed, scale, and resilience. Strategists drew practical conclusions for the months ahead. Naval patrols would keep pressure on the sea lanes, but the decisive terrain would be finance, customs, and export licensing. Success would depend on how fast investigators could match a serial number to a shell company, and then to a frozen account. It would also depend on cooperation with partners who control ports and airfields that sit on the edges of the Caribbean and the Pacific. The goal was simple: make the network slow and expensive so that each attempt to rebuild becomes easier to detect and cheaper to stop. The day closed with a sense of measured control, but no one inside the Situation Room mistook control for closure. The adversary had built a machine that uses commerce as camouflage, and machines like that do not stop on their own. The next phase would push deeper into procurement rings and data centers that hold the keys to prepayment and delivery. The new battlefield no longer sits in distant deserts. It now hides inside cargo holds that crisscross the Caribbean, and the evidence recovered at sea is the map that points to where the fight must go next. As dawn rose over the Caribbean, the waves carried the scent of smoke and salt. The USS Freedom moved slowly through the debris field, left by the night battle. Burned hulls drifted in the distance, their metal frames still glowing under the first light. The ship's flag remained upright, fluttering against a soft morning wind. For the sailors aboard, silence replaced the thunder that had shaken the sea only hours earlier. They had fought not for territory or conquest, but to prevent a tide of poison from reaching American shores. The mission's success was measured in more than destroyed vessels or captured suspects. Analysts later calculated that the 5 tons of seized narcotics equaled roughly 18 million lethal doses of fentanyl, enough to devastate entire cities if it had reached the mainland. The interception represented not just a law enforcement victory, but the preservation of countless lives. Each container neutralized at sea, translated into families, spared the loss that addiction brings. In that sense, Operation Iron Tide became a form of humanitarian defense, protecting citizens from a weapon that kills silently and spreads through communities faster than any conventional threat. For the crew of the Freedom, the aftermath carried a sense of purpose mixed with unease. They had confronted an enemy that did not wear uniforms, yet operated with the discipline of an organized military. The engagement proved that the modern cartel functions more like a private navy than a criminal syndicate. Its vessels were armed, its fighters trained, and its technology sourced from the same markets that supply states. That evolution marked a dangerous shift in the global balance between crime and security. It forced strategists to accept that non-state actors could now wage war through industry, technology, and finance. From a strategic viewpoint, the operation demonstrated how America's security perimeter has expanded far beyond its borders. Maritime patrols once aimed to stop smugglers now confront hybrid adversaries that blend commerce, politics, and warfare. The battle in the Caribbean showed that national defense no longer depends solely on armies or aircraft, but on coordination between intelligence, finance, and law enforcement. Every seizure at sea has implications for trade policy, and every data leak can expose new battlefronts hidden inside economic systems. The intelligence recovered during Iron Tide also changed how agencies view the intersection of crime and governance. The files and machinery captured in Colombia revealed a pattern of cooperation between cartels and industries linked to state power. These findings blurred the line between corruption and strategy. When financial institutions and defense contractors become tools of illicit trade, the threat extends beyond policing. It challenges the principles of sovereignty and international law that underpin global stability. Washington's response reflected that realization. Instead of a single military campaign, the United States adopted a layered approach that connects maritime operations with financial sanctions and diplomatic coordination. Strategically, the operation confirmed that America's military and law enforcement agencies can act as one instrument when national interests demand precision. The coordination among naval forces, intelligence units, and partner nations showed that modern deterrence depends on integration more than size. While the war on narcotics will not end with one battle, its nature has become clearer. The challenge is no longer confined to borders, but exists within the systems that move money, materials, and information. As the sun climbed higher, the last smoke trails faded into the horizon. The Freedom turned toward port, carrying its crew and the evidence of what had been uncovered. The calm of the sea felt temporary, as if another storm was forming just beyond sight. Yet the mission had proved that vigilance, when combined with unity and resolve, could hold back forces that thrive in the shadows. America's wars no longer begin with soldiers. They begin with signals, shipments, and the courage to intercept. The camera of history will remember the image of that lone vessel gliding across quiet water, a symbol of resolve in a world where conflict no longer follows old maps. Justice in this new age does not rest on land. It sails with those who choose to act before danger arrives. Operation Irontide proved that vigilance still protects freedom, and that courage can stop a hidden war before it begins. What do you think this mission means for the future of global security? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe to Military Power, because every story we uncover brings you closer to the truth behind modern warfare.